following programme contains scenes some viewers may find disturbing. Discretion is advised.
On today's program, we're going to take you to Fort Saskatchewan to tell you the story of the only woman ever hanged in Alberta. At the time, the press dubbed her the Mobster Princess, and her ghost still lingers today, pleading for justice. And to the depths of the Laurel Cavern in Pennsylvania, haunted by ghosts for hundreds of years. And then to Caledonia Hills in Nova Scotia, where poltergeists are believed to cause spontaneous fires. And to Gallows Hill in Wilmington, North Carolina, where the ghosts of a cruel penal system haunt today's occupants.
Alberta's Fort Saskatchewan is a place where history has been preserved in the many original buildings. But sometimes, after dark, echoes of that history can be heard behind the walls of these old buildings.
There's a lot of history in Fort Saskatchewan, and most of it's been preserved in the buildings that make up the museum. And a lot of restless souls, including that of a 22-year-old woman who's been dubbed the Mobster Princess. She was hanged here in 1923 in a case that outraged the public. It was even appealed to the Prime Minister of the day.
The most sensational execution that occurred here in Fort Saskatchewan at the jail was that of Florence Lysandra. Florence came to Canada with her parents when she was 9 years old. You have to wonder who Florence Lysandra really was. Was she a tragic figure, a victim of circumstance and the limitations of the women of her time? Or was she a hardened criminal? Her parents arranged a marriage for her with Charles Lysandra. She was very unhappy about the marriage. Charles took his young bride to the United States, where he anticipated making his fortune. Unfortunately, he acquired a lot of gambling debts and decided that it would be best to come back to Canada. He knew he could count on his old boss, Emilio Piccirillo, to give him a job. Now, Piccirillo, also known as Emperor Pic, was a very successful businessman. He was also a very generous man as well. He would help people who were in financial difficulties with things like food and clothing. Emilio Piccirillo owned the Alberta Hotel in Blairmore, but that's not where his wealth came from. His wealth came from his illegal business of rum running. From 1916 to 1923, Alberta was a dry province, and Emilio had 6 very fast cars that he used to elude the police as he moved his liquor back and forth over the BC border. Emilio had a son, Steve, who also worked with his father in the rum running business.
Emilio Piccirillo was a father figure to young Florence, and when she couldn't abide her ne'er-do-well husband any longer, Emilio and his wife Maria took young Florence in. Things may have turned out differently for Florence had she not moved in with the Piccirillos. One day, while Steve was on one of his liquor runs, he was spotted by the police. In the hot pursuit that followed, Steve drew a gun and shot at the policeman, who fired back. In the exchange of gunfire, Steve was shot in the hand. He was arrested moments later.
When Emilio Picarillo found that his son had been shot, he and Florence went to visit Lawson in Coleman and find out what had happened and where his son was. There was an argument that ensued and shots that were fired. In the end, the unarmed Constable Lawson was shot in the back in view of his wife and child. He died almost instantly. The following day, Picarillo and Lysandra were arrested and committed to stand trial. The defense offered no evidence and no witnesses appeared on their behalf. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before bringing in a verdict of guilty. They did not recommend mercy for either. Whatever her involvement, nothing was proven at the trial, and Florence remained silent throughout. Towards the end of the trial, she deteriorated both mentally and physically, weeping in the courtroom. In her last days, she spent a lot of time in consultation with Father Fidelis, the priest of a nearby Roman Catholic church, and she found solace in her faith.
I didn't do it.
The public was outraged at the idea of a woman being executed. There were appeals that were launched, but to no avail. In a last-minute attempt to escape the noose, Florence made a statement saying that Picarillo had told her to take the blame because they wouldn't hang a woman. Her statement was ignored. The hangman fixed the noose with expert hands and sent Florence crashing to her death. Florence was 23 years old and the only woman to be executed in Alberta.
Steep stairs. I'm entering the courtroom, the actual courtroom of the Court Museum in Fort Saskatchewan. My name is Irene Martina. I'm a clairvoyant and a medium. And what I've done is I brought it with me a little tool today, and I've asked it or programmed it to just swing back and forth to pick up energy. Now I want it to swing very strong when the energy changes. So for example, if I move towards the judge may have actually sat, or one of the judges, you can see it starts to pick up different energy. So everything in the universe has energy. Nothing does not have energy. And energy that carries a lot of emotion can be placed in objects. This is the prisoner's box, and I'm sure that we're going to get a very strong reaction from being over here. I think I'll even go in it and see what happens. The air feels very thick. Even as I walk over in here, it starts to feel cold and much thicker. I feel the presence of a spirit in here named Timothy, who, not an innocent man by rights, but definitely innocent of the charge he was here for. And he got sentenced for something he didn't do. So you can imagine the history that must have went on in this place. How many innocent people were charged, how many innocent people hung, how much violence was involved in this place. Amazing history.
I've been participating at the Fort Saskatchewan Museum here for quite some time. I was first their program coordinator and now do volunteer for their special events and programs and research as well. But part of my time at the museum here, I have experienced quite a few strange happenings, voices and noises, and actually shapes and images of people. I do have one that I captured on film, particularly when I was out on a Fright Night program, part of our Halloween event. We had a group of individuals, young individuals, come out for a sleepover program. And these young individuals, throughout the evening, participated in the Halloween event, and then later on in the evening, after the event was closed, we were getting ready to settle in for the evening, and we went outside to do a check of the grounds, and I had my digital camera with me to take a few shots of the kids while they were doing their activities, and noticed that there was a strange fog that suddenly appeared on the grounds when we were doing our check. And in the midst of taking all of these photos, I did actually capture some of the images on the fog, but didn't really realize that was what I had captured till later on in the evening when I settled the kids down into their sleep arrangements and went to my computer to load the images off the digital camera. And it was at that point in time that I realized it was the image of a woman that had appeared in the fog, and I strongly believe that it was the image of Florence Lysandra, a lady that was hanged at Fort Saskatchewan here. Later on in the evening, after the children had settled down into their sleeping arrangements, I had gone upstairs to do a second check to make sure that the children were all secure for the evening and everything was safe and sound. And upon leaving the courtroom upstairs where the children were sleeping, I had passed by a secondary room, and I noticed that the curtain was moving. There was some kind of a movement in behind the curtain. So I stood and looked for a second longer, and the movement continued, and the curtain crumpled down into the ground. At that point in time, I was very startled, but certainly the curiosity got the better of me, so I crept up to the curtain that was crumpled onto the floor. I lifted it up quickly. From underneath the curtain appeared the face of a young lady. We got more than what we bargained for when we participated in the event that night. Given the nature of our actual program that was happening at the time and the history of the Fort Saskatchewan jail and the 29 hangings that did occur here, it certainly does raise some eyebrows.
This is Dr. Henry's house, and it's the one in this whole place that seems to have the most spiritual action. I feel Dr. Henry very much in here, and I'm just going to take a moment to tell him that we're not here to bother him in any way, and I'm asking his permission if we can be here. He's saying yes. There are two children, a spirit of two children in this house and his wife. So we'll take a walk around all the rooms and just see what we can find out. This is the living room. There's an energy of a woman that's sitting on the couch. The little girl's here. It's not the woman, it's the little girl. No one's here. No one's here. The little girl is here. The little boy's over here. God, he didn't like that. All right, it's a good thing I wasn't using the metal one. It just broke. All the pieces are on the floor.
Once an outpost for the Northwest Mounted Police, Fort Saskatchewan was where criminals faced due process of the law of the day. Do some of these souls still walk here looking for redemption, hoping the truth about their lives and deaths will be revealed? After the break, the mysterious Laurel Caverns of Pennsylvania.
We are the largest commercial cave in Pennsylvania, a little over 3.2 miles of passageway in our cave. We are 46 stories deep. Many, many years ago, as the water seeped through the cracks of the cave, it eroded the calcium out of the cave and created the passageways that we have today. I've been playing in this cave since I was 13 years old, and there have been a lot of stories floating around in the area.
And one day I was working here in maintenance, and something happened to me that I never believed I would see. I was just finishing up on a project, and I was coming around the corner, and then all of a sudden I seen this here woman walking down in a white gown, very flowing white gown. And I'm watching her and looking, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? And all of a sudden I realized I must be seeing a ghost or seeing things. Then all of a sudden she disappeared. There has been a lot of sightings in this cavern. People have seen different types of ghosts. Now I'm a believer.
There are just over 3 miles of tunnels and caves at Laurel Caverns in Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful tourist attraction. Some of the caves go 46 stories underground. But this beauty, this incredible beauty, seems hard to leave, even in death.
The lady in white usually just there for a few moments, and then she disappears. And she's wearing some type of a white flowing outfit. We believe she may be Polly Williams. She was the young bride-to-be that was pushed off White Rocks by her husband-to-be. We also have a few other ghosts running around here. We have Norman Kell. He is the deceased owner of the cave.
A young tour guide was making his rounds one day when he saw a man standing high on the rocks in an area that was unsafe.
Sir, get down from there, sir. It's dangerous.
The man waved to him as if beckoning him closer, and then he suddenly appeared behind him as well. The figure on the rocks began to approach him, and the young tour guide fled from the area.
I think Norman stays around just to keep an eye on his place, to make sure it stays, like I said, a natural wonder, and he just keeps checking up on us.
The numerous ghost sightings prompted the United Paranormal Investigators to try to document these claims.
Our goal is to capture any kind of paranormal evidence that could prove a haunting here. We've been investigating for about 6 years. We run a multinational group. The temperature is always a constant in a cave, so any disturbances we get in the temperature would lean towards paranormal activity.
It's actually saying 42 degrees Fahrenheit.
What about up this way?
Down here. Up here, hopefully it's still 45. And it's saying 43.
Average is about 52 degrees year-round. And up in the other room, it should have been 52 also. Now, it does feel colder to me, and I'm down here a lot, and I do feel a lot colder than normal.
Okay, it's down to 0 now, but just a moment ago it jumped up to a 5.6. That's pretty high reading.
Depending on what the average reading in the area is, say it's a 0.4 is the average, you want an increase of at least 10 to present any kind of immediate paranormal phenomenon.
Somewhere in these meandering caves, a bounty of stolen treasure is believed to be buried. The spirit of fugitive Frank Coley is often seen in a cave 30 stories below, warding off those who come too close.
My wife and I are from western Pennsylvania, and we were just riding around one weekend, and we saw the sign for Laurel Caverns, so we decided, oh, that'd be nice to go in there and look at the caverns, because we've never been there before. So we were inside checking out the nice scenery and all of a sudden we saw this guy come around the corner, fairly large guy, about 6'4", maybe 300 pounds, and all of a sudden he caught sight of us, and he started to come toward us, and all of a sudden the guy just disappears. Apparently, this guy was an outlaw, and he used to hide his jewels there.
We have Frank Coley from the Frank Coley gang. We believe that he's kind of looking around for his treasure that he may have hidden in the cave. They used the cave as a hiding area at one point. We've had people who have taken pictures in the cave experience the orb-like thing in their pictures and photographs. And this is where they usually see them, is at the top of the staircase there.
Well, he just got a whole lot of ecto. We got to show the conversation there. That's a really good picture.
We got ecto, some form of spiritual energy. You got orbs, ecto, and you got the apparition. The apparition is the strongest energy form. This is the second most base strong energy form. I believe it's very solid evidence that it's probably some form of energy most likely spiritual.
You got an orb, Kell? Where at?
You can see. There's no circled dots in that area. There's nothing like that. That is stronger than moisture or dust.
In the flash on here with the night vision, I thought I saw some kind of formation. It almost looks like there might be an orb flying down and kind of this way. I mean, I think the fact that we got 2 orbs over here, one on video and one on still digital, and then another orb back that way would definitely lead to something being here.
About 40 stories down, deep within the cavern, the apparition of a French soldier is often seen, still at his post, long after the French-Indian Wars. According to reports, this spectral soldier, a muscular man, has been known to fire upon observers.
Usually the French soldier has a long coat on, some shiny buttons, and he is seen mostly in the cave. He's been seen by just about everybody that works here. Yes, I was curious about this section because this is called the Devil's Staircase, and in the olden days, the early explorers used our third entrance, which is blocked off now, and they actually climbed down that crevasse right there, and it was a devil of a climb. It was very dangerous, so that's why they named it the Devil's Staircase. So I was curious to see if there was anything happening in this section right here, because it was a dangerous part of the cave.
Batteries depleted, camera shutting down. Brand new batteries just put right on into the camera, and it shut down. It will not take a picture. They didn't necessarily want us prying into their territory. The fact that sometimes it takes a picture with a flash and sometimes it doesn't tells me that it's obviously whoever's in here is having fun playing with my camera.
With all this water, there's something called white noise for EVPs. It's pure noise that's a constant that they can use to generate sound. So we do have a good chance of getting some kind of EVP here. So I'd go ahead and like to try a couple of those. Hello? How many people are here tonight? What are your names? How many people are here tonight? Sounds like something's being said there. Right after the camera goes off. How many people are here tonight? Almost sounds like they're saying 2. Hello? How many people are here tonight?
Yeah, that's what I hear. I hear 2.
Right now we're hearing the recording I just did, and so far it's appeared that a spirit said there are 2 people here. I asked the question, how many people are here? And it sounds like somebody's saying 2. Overall, we've gotten several photos, video, and EVP recordings of spirits throughout this entire cave.
What really got to me was the EVPs. That was some really strong evidence.
I believe that this is definitely one night that I really enjoyed in gaining paranormal evidence. If anyone is interested into finding out if there's anything in spiritually or ghost-like, this is definitely one place to check out.
It's not only the caves that harbor the spirits of the dead. The grounds above Laurel Cavern are also believed to be haunted. In the late 1930s, a DC-10 airplane crashed into the campground above Laurel Cavern. There were very few survivors found amongst the wreckage.
I was camping right outside of Laurel Caverns, and I decided to take a hike. When I was coming up to a clearing, I saw these 3 guys. They turned to me, and I saw that they were gashed and battered and bloody. then they started to advance on me, and the closer they got, I started to back up a little bit. They never said a word. They reached toward me, and when they got close, they just disappeared. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced in my life.
The ghostly apparitions of plane crash survivors above ground and the myriad spirits inhabiting the labyrinth of tunnels below are manifestations of a mystery as deep as the very caves themselves. After the break, a young girl becomes the medium for poltergeist activity. A small campground in Nova Scotia's Caledonia Hills appears to be a tranquil haven for tourists. But campers here have experienced events that are strange and scary.
One evening, my girlfriend Sarah and I decided to go for a walk around the campgrounds. As we were walking along, Sarah spotted something in the dirt up ahead. It was a beautiful brooch. She dug it out of the dirt, cleaned it all up. Sarah really liked it. It looked like something my grandmother would have worn. It was very old. It looked like it had been around for a while. We decided to keep it and put it in our knapsack. As we did, Sarah said she felt like somebody was there with us, watching us. I looked around, but I couldn't see anybody. But she said that somebody was there with us. So we decided to head back to the campsite. When we got there, I put the bag down by the tent. We were sitting relaxing by the campfire when all of a sudden I noticed that the bag had burst into flames. I quickly put the fire out. Then I noticed that the fire had started from the pocket where the brooch was located. And the strangest thing? The brooch wasn't even damaged. In fact, it wasn't even hot. We told some other campers what had happened that night. They told us that this campsite had a history of random fires and hauntings. Apparently, this campsite was built on top of a house that was home to a poltergeist.
The campsite at Caledonia Hills, Nova Scotia, was once the farm of Alexander and Mary MacDonald. In 1921, the MacDonalds adopted a 16-year-old girl named Mary Ellen, whose father had died in a mining accident. Mary Ellen was to become the medium through which poltergeists acted out their nefarious mischief.
The MacDonalds could not have imagined their fate. The MacDonalds could not have imagined their fate when their first and only adopted child, Mary Ellen, first arrived at their home.
Come in, Mary Ellen.
She was a very withdrawn and depressed child, and the MacDonalds understood that this may have been due to the fact that she had experienced the death of her parents at a very young, vulnerable age. It was not long after Mary Ellen's arrival that very strange things began to occur. Spontaneous lights were reported by neighbors. And other things also were very strange. The family would hear footsteps upstairs while the whole family was downstairs. Over the next few days, various household items began to disappear. And then one day, furniture was found out on the front lawn, all ablaze. That fire was put out, but thereafter, spontaneous blazes occurred all throughout the property over a constant period of time. And the only constant factor in all of this was the presence of Mary Ellen. The already withdrawn Mary sank deeper and deeper into depression and silence. Indeed, the locals began to say she was a witch and that she was possessed by the devil. Desperate to find some answers and to stop the damage at their farmhouse, the MacDonalds summoned the police.
We don't believe it's children's pranks or...
Detective P.O. Carroll arrived at the farmhouse, and he brought with him an Antigonish reporter, Mr. Harold Whidden. Both of them spent the night at the MacDonald farmhouse. And during the night, lo and behold, the detective was awakened abruptly with a slap to the face. Yet nobody was there. Afterwards, the detective reported that indeed the McDonalds were a credible witness and that all of the fires on the property were not set by human hands. Then came the night that caused the McDonalds to flee their home. It was known as the night of the 38 fires. And all through the night and all through the day, spontaneous fires were seen all through the property. The story attracted the interest of a well-known paranormal investigator, Dr. Walter Franklin Prince. He arrived at the farm with a psychic who had the ability to transmit from the other side messages in the written form. The frightened McDonald family watched the pen fly across the paper as the psychic was channeling the energy that was present on the farm. Through the psychic, the spirit warned that if the McDonalds did not leave the house as soon as possible, they would die. Prince theorized that the spirit was setting the fires through Mary, but without her knowledge. Very much like ghostwriters, or spirits who speak through ghostwriters, this spirit was working through Mary Ellen. No one is sure why the spirit was in the house or why it chose Mary Ellen. Maybe it was because of Mary Ellen's vulnerable emotional state due to the loss of her parents. No one really knows. This phenomenon is often associated with adolescent girls, young girls who have experienced traumatic events in their past. Poltergeists are known to cause levitations, spontaneous fires, lights, sounds, and even apparitions. Some believe that poltergeists are not spirits at all, but are pure telekinetic energy. Others believe that extreme cases of poltergeist activity are the work of demons or the devil. Although the McDonalds left their farm in 1921, spontaneous fires continued to occur. Shortly after they had left, the home mysteriously burned down. Today, the property is now used as a campsite. And even to this day, campers still believe and have reported seeing apparitions of a young girl walking along the paths joining the various campsites.
My wife and I were sleeping in the tent when we heard a strange noise. It sounded like wild animals, but we were very careful not to leave any food or garbage around the campsite, so I'm sure there was nothing there to attract them. I decided to go out and have a look. The camp was a mess, our stuff was strewn all around, some of it was even on fire. I know I doused our fire with water before I went to bed. My wife can attest to that. Later, we were sharing our experience with our friends, and they said they'd heard of similar occurrences happening at the same campground. They asked me if I found anything or picked anything up. I had to admit that I had. There on the ground, right in front of our campsite, lay a fork. It looked like an antique. I don't know why, I just picked it up and put it in my pocket. They said that's what caused the fire. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm just glad that I didn't take it into my tent.
Many people believe the spirit that haunts the McDonald land remains on the land, trying to drive people away. It wants everything to remain in place. Is it peace the spirit wants? Or is there something more sinister going on? Campers, beware. And take care you don't remove anything from the property, for fear of spontaneous combustion. After the break, the gallows have gone on Gallows Hill, but the ghosts of the hanged linger on. Wilmington, North Carolina, is a port town whose history dates back to the 1700s. And like most ports, it has a rowdy history that has left its mark on the city to this day. Of all the haunted locations, the most troubling is the place where the city's first gallows stood.
Sitting here in the Price Gauze House, otherwise known as the Hanging House, This house was built over a hanging ground. They did all the public hangings in Wilmington from 1800 to 1855 on the lot where this house stands now. So when Dr. William Price built this house, a lot of these unfortunate individuals that had hit the end of a rope and were buried, and now they're in here haunting this place.
Approximately a year ago, my wife and I had heard about the Wilmington ghost tours. And my being very skeptical of these type things and not really a believer, but she insisted that we go. And we walked up to about the middle of town, and he was describing this old house that was supposed to have been a place where they hung criminals in the 1800s.
This was a hanging ground. Dr. William Price, a very practical and moneyed man, built a house on a hanging ground. He thought, just because a couple of hundred people got hanged there, that won't affect my home, that won't affect my family life.
Kept talking about the house being that these spirits from these criminals had been hung, had entered the house, and I wasn't sure, but more he talked, the more he sounded believable, and I'm still not, I'm very skeptical of those type things, but when he walked away, I looked up at the second story window, and something or someone had written help. At that particular time, I called the guy back and says, there's something up there, someone has written help on the window.
Yeah, someone or something.
And I looked up and I saw it and I said, they're gonna have to get help from somebody else. And I went on my merry way. And they were sort of insistent that we help whoever or whatever it was. And I told them, I said, you go up there and help them, and you're going to be writing help in the window. I said, you better come on. And they came with me.
At that particular time, I became a believer. There is such things because I was not hallucinating or anything. I saw it, and I really don't know how to explain it, but it was there. I really don't know how to explain it, but it was there.
The Gallows of Wilmington, North Carolina took the lives of hundreds. The house now standing on the property is an architectural firm by day, and at night, no one has been able to stay there. In fact, people regularly experience ghostly phenomena simply stepping off the sidewalk and onto the grounds.
There's actually a secret that goes along with this property. You see, many of the men, women, and children who were hung here at this gallows came from other ports of call. And with no one to claim their bodies or pay for burial expense, they simply dug trenches all around here and buried them for free. And then in 1860, just a few years after they moved the gallows a few blocks east of here, away from the ever-encroaching downtown, Dr. William Price, against the advice of his friends, built his family home here. Now, one summer, the Prices had a niece in to visit them. She raced upstairs to her bedroom, and in the room was an old vanity with a beautiful mirror which she was enthralled with. And she sat in front of that mirror and she went about brushing her hair. While she was brushing her hair, she started to feel fingers running through the back of her hair. She turned to find no one in the room. When she turned back to the mirror, there was a gauzy image of a man, a young man, standing in that mirror. Other times, the family would be upstairs sleeping late in the evening, and they would hear sounds coming from the downstairs. Sometimes they'd hear voices, other times they'd hear furnishings as they were being dragged about the lower floors. They had many different experiences with these sounds, and they also included scratching noises that would periodically be heard coming from inside of the walls. In 1996, Hurricane Fran ripped through this area. The hurricane did extensive damage. It closed off most of our beaches here. And an architect that worked here, BMS Architects, lived at Carolina Beach. So the people here at the architectural firm said that he could sleep on the second floor. They already had electricity here. So he set up his bed up on the second floor in one of the offices. One night, he was startled awake by sounds coming from the lower floor. What he heard was furnishings as they were being dragged back and forth. And this alarmed him, but the sounds grew and grew and grew to a point where he could take it no longer. Finally forced himself out of the house, racing down the stairs, out the back door, got in his car, and he drove to Walmart. He slept in the Walmart parking lot, returning the next morning at 8 a.m. Of course, he returned wearing his pajamas because that's the way he ran out of the house.
This hanging house is getting a national reputation as a haunted house. And scientific groups have been in touch about it, and paranormal societies. They all want to know about this one house. Well, I had a medium on my tour one night, but he just wanted to go back and see it on his own. So I took him back to the house. It was just the two of us. Then we're walking back around the side of the house. He's absolutely freezing back there. He's going, "Coal pockets." He goes, "Is that always there?" He's pointing up at one of the windows. I looked, and I saw this old lantern burning in the room, same window where they wrote help on a prior occasion, flickering away. That is the first time I've seen it. Looks like an old lantern, doesn't it? We stood and watched that thing for 10 minutes. Both of us, like jaws, slack, dropped down. We're like, this is great. Put a shiver up my spine. I'll never forget it. So eerie looking.
One evening I was in the home alone. I was helping out with a fundraiser. And while I was here, I was carrying a box into the front parlor. And as I was bringing the box in, I had a breath of pipe tobacco blown into my face. I had heard about the pipe tobacco odor experiences, but I never had it happen myself. I wasn't sure exactly what to do. I walked around the room sniffing the air, trying to figure out where the odor exactly was coming from. And that's when I stumbled across the rocking chair. It was rocking back and forth a good 4 inches, and there was no one in the chair. So rightfully, I panicked, and I ran out of the house. And these odors, which still persist to this day, may appear to be strange. However, they were the same last requests of many of those who perished here. One evening, my wife and I were here for an event at this home, and while we were here, she took a stroll to the back of the house with a friend. While they were back there, they noticed a shadowy figure through the windows. Now, they panicked when they came racing to me, and I came to the back of the home to investigate.
Where?
But I couldn't find any shadowy figure there. Later on, I came into the home, and I searched the whole area, and there was no one in here. The shadowy figure has been seen in this home. There have been images of an old man's face that have been seen in windows. Certainly the shadowy figure, figure in black, and that seems to run from the back of the house to the side of the house. A few years ago, a couple of reporters received permission to spend the night in this home to do a story on the unusual occurrences here. While they were here, they set up a recorder in the front parlor. Later that evening, they decided to go out and take a cigarette break, so they put the recorder on record. Outside and returned 20 minutes later. When they rewound the tape and put it on play, partway into it, they heard a male voice grunt and then say, "Help me."
Help me.
What is that?
I didn't hear anything.
You don't hear
Help
it?
me.
You did.
Help me. No, we went out to smoke.
This was quite startling, but no more startling when they heard another voice from directly behind them say the exact same thing. The two panicked, turned around, found no one there.
Did you hear that?
However, a moment later, the solid oak conference table in that room began to pound up and down on the floor. The two reporters flew out of that room.
You gotta get out of here.
People often ask where they can go to experience ghosts in Wilmington. And of course, the prime location we feel is the old Gallows Hill home, BMS Architects. It is the most actively haunted home in Wilmington. We experience things here weekly on our tours, and it hasn't stopped in 7 years now.
Totally paranormal scene that really worked well for my tour, and I appreciate the spirits cooperating in that manner.